Hi everyone, my name is Cielo Fuentes, realtor of 23 years, owner and manager of Keenan Howard Realty, mother of three, wife of one, missionary, daughter of the one true king, and a servant to all. Welcome to our meeting today, and our topic for today is going to be Prop 19. This is to help our audience understand how this may or may not affect them, the benefit of selling your properties when you're up in age. And today we have a privilege and an honor to have a great guest speaker. I was surprised when he said yes. I didn't realize what a true real person he is, because I always thought people of his stature won't have time for little people like us. He's a graduate of UC Davis, UC Hastings College of Law. He's a lawyer, a businessman, and he was a professor teaching real estate law, economics, and property management. He's a father, a husband, and a great Alameda man, the assessor himself, Assessor Mr. Phong. Welcome to our show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well this morning. Thank you very much for having me here.
Actually, it's an honor. I'm truly humbled that you said yes. Thank you for making time for us.
It's my privilege to be here. So,
and here, I've invited the Keenan Howard team to come and join us. And I know they're on a little bit shy right now, but I'm pretty sure they'll jump in with questions at the end of our topic. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to our assessor, Mr. Phong La.
Why don't we do this? Let me share my screen real quick because I have a couple of things I need to go over. And
okay.
Then, can you guys see this? Okay.
It's starting?
Yep. You see the screen?
There you go. There you go.
All right. Perfect. So I always start my presentations with a little bit of a disclaimer. I tell people, although I'm a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. So this information is for general informational purposes only. So Prop 19 and what we do, but real quick before we go into Prop 19, I want to make sure everyone knows what the assessor does.
Okay.
So it is my job as the assessor to determine the taxable value of all property in Alameda County, which includes land, buildings, and business equipment as well, not just real property, but business property. Your filing cabinets, your computers, your machinery for your business, boats and airplanes as well are also taxed. So we put a value on all of that, and then we put a tax bill together as a county. There are three people who are involved in the tax bill process. Myself, the assessor, who puts a value on everything, and the auditor controller applies the tax rate, because we know that there are different tax rates depending on where you're at and which district and what cities you're in. And then everything goes to the tax collector to actually collect the money. So the three of us are all separately elected individuals. So you decide who takes these jobs every 4 years. Property taxes, and where does it go? Well, about 42% of all property taxes goes to the schools, 18% goes to the cities, roughly 15% to the counties. Special districts get it, like the water district and water district and park districts. And then there's something called redevelopment successor agencies, which the state eliminated, but some still exist, and they'll probably exist for another 20 or 30 years. If you ever feel like you're being taxed too much, let us know, right? What we do is we review every year whether property values are correct or not. And we're looking at, right now, properties that were acquired or purchased in 2022. We know that the market has changed. The peak of the market looks like it was between March of 2022 to October of 2022. So we looked at different zip codes in different cities, and we're gonna be reducing, for those of you who live in Alameda County, we'll be proactively reducing, without you having to do a thing, your property taxes if you acquired property from that time in most cities. Not every city. Some cities still see an increase in real estate values, but in many cities, they were seeing reductions. And so we are basing what we're seeing, and the data actually came from the Realtors Association. So I'm appreciative of the local Realtors Association for helping us with that data. Once we do give you a reduction though, just know that in the future years, it can go back to what would have been the market value plus 2% each year. So hypothetically, if you get a 5% reduction this year because we deemed your house to have been reduced by 5%, and then next year, the home values go up 10%, your property taxes will have seen a 5% reduction from this past year. Next year, you'll pick up that 5% again, plus the extra 2% that would have been added had we not done the reduction. So that's how Proposition 8 works in terms of the assessor making a reduction for you. Prop 19 passed in 2020. It took effect in 2021 and it did several different things. My parents bought a house in Union City, California in 1980 for $100,000.
Sweet.
Property taxes for $100,000 is about 1.25% with special assessment. So it's about $1,250 a year for property taxes, right? In 1980. The house today is worth about $1 million. The assessed value, $100,000 in 1980 plus 2% a year for 43 years comes out to about $200,000 of assessed value, right? So the property taxes that they pay on that house are about $2,500 a year, roughly. Under the current law, or excuse me, under the prior law before Prop 19, my parents could give me this house, not worry about whether I move in or whether I use it for a rental house, and I would be able to keep their low $200,000 property tax assessment. We're going to go into more details, but under the new Prop 19 law, in order for me to keep this low assessment, I would have to move into the house after they gave it to me. If I use it for a rental house, I would get reassessed to the new market value of $1 million. So that's kind of generic what happened with Prop 19. So instead of saying existing law though, this should say prior law because Prop 19 now is the existing law. Where it says existing law, this is what it was before Prop 19 took effect. All right, Prop 19 took effect in 2021. So all this is now what used to be. It used to be that you can transfer, and if it was a grandchild transfer, if the grandparents gave to the grandchild, in order for that to work, the parents in between had to be deceased. So if your grandparents give you a house and your parents are still alive, that house will get reassessed. But if your grandparents give you a house and your parents are already deceased, then they can transfer that house to you under the old law. The new law, Prop 19's law, says that the transfer is now capped at $1 million. And I have a slide to show this as well later. If it's more than $1 million beyond the assessed value, there's a new adjustment to that assessed value.
I think I have another slide right here.
Let's see.
The new Prop 19 as against the other. Would that be different?
Yeah, so there's two parts of Prop 19. There is the parent-child part, and then there's the base value part. This is talking about the base value.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to do this. Let's go back to my slides.
Okay.
My apologies. I didn't get a chance to look at your slides before
I know.
our presentation. So let me do this. So like I said, there are two parts to Prop 19. One is a base value transfer, and the other is the parent-child exclusion. Effective February 16th is where parents and grandparents, if the parents in between are passed away, pass on their primary residence.
Okay.
Right. Now, this eliminated what you used to be able to do before. Before Prop 19 took effect, you could transfer up to $1 million of assessed value, any rental property, and including your primary property. So because Prop 19 took effect, any transfer of anything that's not a primary property, commercial property, residential, industrial property, vacation homes, all those get reassessed now after the first.
Okay.
The only thing that can be passed on now without a reassessment is the primary home. I'm gonna go back to that example with my parents, right? If the transfer of the property is more than $1 million plus the base value, I think the better example is example 2. All right. In this situation, my parents bought a house in Piedmont for $100,000 in 1980. The house is now worth $2 million.
Okay.
The current assessed value of that home is $200,000. The new property taxes are going to be dependent upon the current market value of that home. The difference between that current market value and the initial assessed value plus $1 million. So the assessed value is 200,000. You add $1 million to that, you get $1.2 million. Anything that is transferred that's less than $1.2 million, I get 100% of that value up. Anything beyond $1.2 million gets added to the assessed value. So the difference between $1.2 million and the $2 million market value is 800,000. That 800,000 gets added to the property tax assessment of 200,000. So the new property taxes are $1 million. You get that? I'm gonna go one more time.
Yeah.
$200,000 assessed value, right?
Yeah.
The assessed value plus 1 million, 1.2 million will not get reassessed. The difference between 1.2 and the market value of 2 million is 800,000.
Right.
That 800,000 gets added to the original assessed value of 200,000, creating a new assessed value of $1 million.
Okay.
So the new property tax amount is about $12,500, which is higher than what my parents are paying at $2,500, but it's lower than a full reassessment of $2 million, which would have been $25,000 of property taxes. This is where I kind of slow it down and see if everyone understood that part, because that's a little bit more math than most people like to do.
Okay. So if for us to know what the assessment value of the property, the said property, we need to go to you to get it reassessed?
Yes.
So
what's gonna happen is we're gonna look at the current market value of that home.
Okay.
You give your house to your child.
Yeah.
And see what that market value. As realtors, you kind of get an idea of where the market value is roughly already.
Right.
You guys can look for comparable sales just like we do, right? We do the exact same process that most people will go through in the market, right? An appraiser will look for comparable values.
Right. But on yours will be whatever is recorded.
No.
So you hire an appraiser as well?
We have almost 50 appraisers in the assessor.
Oh, okay.
And we will look at the value, the current market value of that home.
Okay.
So here's the better visual, right?
Okay.
My mom and dad keep that house.
Yeah.
The property taxes are about $2,500.
Right.
If my parents transfer the house to me before Prop 19 took effect, too late now, can't do it. But if they did, I would have been able to keep the $2,500 low property taxes.
Okay.
If they transfer the house to me after Prop 19 took effect, which is today, and I move into that house and make it my primary home, the property taxes are $12,500. If they transfer the house to me today and I don't move in and it's not my primary home and I rent it out, property taxes are then $25,000.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So that works out.
Yes.
Any questions about that?
So I have a question on the $1 million. That's what you said is the assessed value of the property.
Correct.
How did you come up with but then you have appraisers that determine appraised value. Is it an appraiser that determines assessed value? How's assessed value determined on the property?
The assessed value is the market value of the property. So the appraiser determines the market value.
Yeah, but what's the difference between the $1 million and the $2 million?
So it's because it's a parent-child transfer. There are different rules for how we come up with the assessed value. Assessed value is not always, so in a normal situation, in a normal sale, right? If you were selling to me and we're not related at all, right? The new assessed value will be whatever the market value of that house is. But if you were my parent and you gave me the house, the assessed value is no longer the market value, it's the Prop 19 value based on the difference between the current assessed value plus $1 million to the market value of the home. So I'm gonna go back to this example, right? My parents buy the house.
I'm trying to understand that how do you define the current assessed value?
The current assessed value is based on what the law tells us to apply. So
Okay.
if there is no parent-child
Criteria.
transfer involved at all, the current assessed value is the market value, right?
Right.
But if there's a parent-child transfer involved, then the current assessed value is based on the parent-child laws. The parent-child law says you can give your child a house, but if that house you give them has a market value of more than $1 million plus the current assessed value, then it's that difference plus the current assessed value. That was a little confusing. I can see it on your face.
So the $1 million. Okay, so the $1 million is just a flat amount for everybody.
No, it's a flat amount that gets added to
Right.
the current assessed value from the parents. So the parents' assessed value. So in this situation, I use $1 million because it's easy, right?
Right.
All says I take the parents' assessed value on that house in Piedmont. The parents' assessed value is $200,000.
Right.
Do you understand how I got to 200,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So but the market value currently for that house is $2 million.
Right.
So the law says I take the parents' assessed value of 200,000, I add $1 million to it. The law literally says plus 1 million, right? So that gets me to $1.2 million is what the parents are allowed to transfer without triggering any type of adjustment in the assessed value.
Got it. Okay.
Because that house is worth more than 1.2 million, I have to take that difference of 1.2 million and what that house is currently worth. That difference is $800,000.
Mm-hmm.
That $800,000 difference, and I add it to the parents' assessed value.
Okay, I understand that.
That's how I got to $1 million of assessed value. So we could make that math work for anything else, right? It could be, hypothetically, let's say that house is worth $3 million. The difference then is 1.8 million.
Right.
That 1.8 million would be added to the $200,000 assessed value that the parents have. So the new assessed value would be $2 million.
Million.
Yep.
So that's how it would work.
Okay.
Understand it.
Thanks for the question, Chuck.
Yeah.
Perfect question, Chuck. I know this is,
I'm a math guy.
I wish there was an easier way for me to explain this. It's just, it's so math intensive, and most of us, aren't great with math. But here's a caution I always tell people. Talk to your children about what you want to do and what they want to do.
Right.
And talk to your accountant and talk to your lawyers. Why? Because there's something called capital gains, right? And if you hypothetically give the house to your child doesn't keep it, ends up selling it right after they get it, there's going to be a huge capital gains because there's something that they would lose out on, which is the adjusted basis, right? This is where it's important to talk to lawyers, to estate planning lawyers, and also to accountants, right? Because if that house goes to your child after you pass, their adjusted basis goes up to the current market value. Whereas if you give it to them now while you're still alive, they don't get an adjusted basis. So if they sell it, they have a huge capital gain. Right? And people don't think about that stuff.
Right.
People always ask the question, what do you think I should do with this house? Should I give it to my kid now or later? Well, have you talked to your children about it? Have you talked to them about what they want to do with it? Because if you give it to them now and they don't move in and make it their primary home, the property taxes get adjusted.
Right.
So you sure you want to give it to them now? So that's why it's important to have that conversation. Again, this is just another caution. Speak to a lawyer, speak to a CPA, right?
Right.
So that's part one of Prop 19, the change of how parents can pass on property to their children.
Right.
Like I said, before Prop 19, it didn't matter whether the parents lived in the house or not, whether it was a commercial property or not. You could transfer any primary home to your children without worrying about what the value of it is. And on top of that, you can transfer up to $1 million of assessed value in rental property to your children and not get reassessed. But now all rental properties will get reassessed when transferred. And you get, like I said, with that last math problem, you get to transfer up to the assessed value plus $1 million to your children without an additional change to your assessment. All right, Prop 19 had two parts and people don't realize that. The other part is base value transfers. If you're 55 years or older, and I can tell by this screen that no one's 55 or older, right?
I'm
You can-
proud because I'm proud to say I'm 55. I get that discount at the corner breakfast restaurant.
So before Prop 19, you could only transfer your base value, your assessed value for your house to another house if it was in one of 10 counties, right? Now with Prop 19, you could take it anywhere in the state. And they also allow you to upsize. Before Prop 19, you could only buy a house that had a lower market value than the house that you were selling.
Yeah.
Now you can buy a more expensive house, get a slight adjustment in your property taxes, and still take most of your low property taxes with you. And with Prop 19, you can do it 3 times, not just 1 time anymore. So here's an example, all right? A couple in Alameda buys a house in 1980 for $200,000. The assessed value is $400,000, right? Because they bought it over 40 years ago at 2% a year, you get to about $400,000. So they're currently paying about $5,000 a year in property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the house is worth $1.2 million.
Okay.
They sell that house for $1.2 million and buy a house in Livermore for $700,000.
Okay.
They get to keep their low $400,000 assessment with them, even though they bought a house that was $700,000. As long as they sold the house in Alameda and bought the house in Livermore, or vice versa, within 2 years. Any questions about that part? That's pretty easy to understand.
Yeah.
Right? This is just a graph showing the exact same thing, right? $1.2 million value house, assessed value of $400,000. They buy a house for $700,000, but they get to keep the $400,000 property tax base. Very straightforward. What happens if they buy a more expensive house, right? Same example, house in Alameda, $1.2 million in market value. They sell that house, they buy a house in San Diego for $1.7 million. What happens to their assessment? 1.2 by 1.7. Their new assessment is the $400,000 plus the difference between the $1.7 million house and the $1.2 million house. So the new assessment now is $900,000. So they'll be paying about $10,000 a year in property taxes rather than a property tax based on the $1.7 million value, which would put it close to, I don't know, $20,000 a year. So that's how, go ahead.
So it's transferred, it will be 400 plus 500 because of the difference between 1.2 and 1.7. Okay, so there, okay. All right, gotcha.
So that's, and you can do this anywhere in the state now, right? You can take your value with you anywhere.
And you actually go to the county where the replacement home is.
Correct. So in this situation, this is what's going to happen in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
The assessor for San Diego County will reach out to my office and say, hey, we have a base value transfer here because you will file in San Diego County where you moved to.
Right.
And they will ask me, what's the market value of the home that was sold? Right. And I will tell that assessor that house that was sold has a market value of $1.2 million.
Okay.
And had a assessed value, more importantly, that the assessed value is $400,000. So now they know what the math is, right? And they will see, okay, they bought this house in San Diego County for 1.7. The assessor in Alameda County told me that the property tax basis is 400,000, and the difference is 500,000. So we'll add that to the 400 from Alameda County.
But sir, when we go to the county, we just fill out the form. We don't need to bring anything because you would have the records of the assessed and the base value.
Correct.
We don't need to bring. Okay.
Correct. So there is a Prop 19 form. And we're in government, so there's a form for everything in government. Right. So there is a Prop 19 form, and it's on our website, and it's on every assessor's website.
Okay.
As the homeowner, you're required to fill it out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're required to also fill out what is called a homeowner's exemption form, because that's how we know that you're treating that home as your primary home.
Okay.
And here's the difference, right? What I said earlier, and this is where a lot of families run into problems. They don't realize they have to fill out these forms.
Mm-hmm.
You give your house to your child. They want to keep that low basis. They have 1 year to fill out the homeowner's exemption form with the assessor. I don't know if that's your child, right? On that transfer, it doesn't say that that person is your child, right? You're probably transferring to them as a gift, right? Most likely. That doesn't say that they're the children of you. They might have a different last name. If you don't tell us, we won't know, and we're going to reassess that property, right? And I've had to have this conversation with many parents who call and very angry, and they say, "Why did you reassess this house? I gave it to my child." My response is always, how do I know it's your child? If you don't tell us, how do we know? Right? So just very good and diligent about making sure the paperwork gets in.
Gotcha.
So, I always get a big question. I don't want to go into this in too much detail because it's very complicated, but people say, what about if my house is in a trust? Can I give it to my children? Right? The answer is maybe, right? It depends on how you set up your trust and how you give it to your children. And the most common situation is you have more than one child, you give the house to, and the house is in a trust, and you give the house to all, let's say all three of your kids, and you give them equally. You say all three kids have to take the house equally. Well, what happens then, right? One child wants to move into the house, the other two don't. They just want the money from that house, right? What happens? If that first child who decided to keep the house buys out their siblings directly themselves, that house will get reassessed.
Oh, okay.
What they need to do is, and this is where the law is very weird, and this is why I tell people, go to a good estate planning attorney. They can walk you through this, right? That first child needs to have the trust buy out the other children, and that trust has to take out the loan. If that first child takes out the loan themselves, it will be treated as a sale between siblings, and there's no exemption between siblings. There's no exemption in the law that says if a brother or sister transfer each other, there's no reassessment. There is a reassessment between siblings. So if they don't do it right, they will trigger a reassessment.
Right.
So it's very important that they talk to a good lawyer and make sure this is done correctly. All right, you got questions? I think this is, I mean, these, and then the rest are just examples of the trust. We also have a free legal clinic here in Alameda County. When Prop 19 passed, I thought there was gonna be a lot of people calling, asking for help. If you're a resident of Alameda County, you can make an appointment with a free legal clinic. It's on our website. You can go to our website. You can talk to a lawyer for 30 minutes for free, and they'll help kind of talk you through everything.
Great.
And then make an appointment with another lawyer for longer if you need, but the clinic is intended just to keep people legal advice that our office is not allowed to do, just so people understand what's happening.
Well, thank you. That's at least, and we know that there's help, especially for Alameda County residents. And I think this is a great tool to reference to when you're talking to your clients. But I think what I got from the whole 30-minute discussion is that talk to a good lawyer. And your CPA. Always refer. Do not act as if you know it.
Remember, you're a realtor. You're not a lawyer. Don't give legal advice.
I'm not a lawyer. I only what's that? I only am a lawyer on TV or something like that. So, you know, I think that's a.
I want to just interject one other thing.
Yes.
There's an effort in Sacramento to change the law, to bring back the full parent-child transfer. So it's called SCA 4, and it's a state constitutional amendment. If it makes its way through the state legislature, the voters will vote again to change portions of Prop 19 back to the way it was before.
I know, because I kind of like not reassessing it at all. You know, that's a lot of money. But...
So look for it. If it makes it, I don't know if it'll make it through the state legislature or not, but there's an effort by some of them to change the law back to the way it was.
Yeah. And what's your position on that one?
I have a personal position, and then I have a public position. My public position is as the assessor, I should not, because I'm responsible for administering this, I should not give a public opinion about property tax changes. I don't want people to think that I'm biased one way or the other as I administer this.
Okay, at least I.
You can imagine what my personal opinion is, the fact that I have children and I own property.
Yeah.
But your official response is, I only work here.
And here's the thing, I was a lawyer and a realtor for many years, and people ask, why did I become the assessor 4 years ago? Why did I choose to run for this job and take a huge pay cut, right? Because I'm a firm believer that government can do better, right? I'm a big believer that we can do this a lot better, and this is going to be a temporary job for me, because I believe that elected jobs should be temporary jobs. So I came in here with the goal of making this office better. When I feel like I've done everything I can, it's time for me to walk away. And I'll be honest with you, there are many days where government is extremely frustrating. There are days where I slam my head against the wall wondering why it takes so long to get something done.
Oh, yeah.
But I do what I can when I can. And the best thing that I've done for the taxpayers of Alameda County so far was during COVID, we decided to proactively reduce people's property taxes for their businesses because we saw the devastating effect, especially the fact that government was forcing businesses to close. That wasn't right. And because of that, we felt like there was a reduction warranted for their property taxes for their business. So
thank you for that. Thank you for all your efforts on that.
No, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to make less money each year. So don't be surprised if I end up being a realtor again in a few years.
And we will help support you. Well, thank you. Anyone else who has a question? Thank you but thank you once again for giving us this information. I think we feel empowered with this kind of information that you've given us. And we're also a pleasure to meet a real live person from the office. So.
If all of you own property in my county, you'll get a letter from me in July. You get a letter from me every July. But you'll get, just remember, it's me now. So when you see my name on that letter, you know what I look like. Please don't feel dark.
Yeah, my friend Phong gave me a letter. Hey, got a quick question for you, which is not part of the topic on Prop 19. Okay, let's say I'm selling a home. I'm listing a property. Tax records show it's only $1,200, but the actual property is $1,700. Do you?
All right. So we get this question a lot, and this is very important, right?
Okay.
So before I got here, my office didn't care whether the records were correct or not. They only cared about whether the value was correct. They only cared about the dollar amount. They didn't care about the bedroom count, the square footage. They didn't care. I'm of a different opinion. I care. I want to make sure all government records are correct because we depend on them. So like, what did I say earlier about there being a form for everything?
Yes.
The form on my website, property characteristic change form. And this happens a lot. And if you're a realtor, you're selling a house and you see, oh, they added a bedroom to this house 10 years ago. But the record still shows it's a 3-bedroom, not a 4-bedroom. Fill out the property characteristic form, send it in, right? Almost certainly, we already changed the assessed value for that bedroom 10 years ago, but we didn't change the bedroom count. Let us know. We'll look back at the records. It'll show what was taken out 10 years ago. We assessed the change for the bedroom to add another $50,000 or whatever it was 10 years ago. And we can now change the bedroom count.
Okay.
Now, I'll give you a caution. If that addition was unpermitted, meaning they didn't go through the normal government process of getting a permit and we didn't know about it, right? And they still lived in that house, what will probably happen is it will trigger a partial reassessment.
Right.
Right? Because we didn't know they added a bedroom 10 years ago. They didn't tell us, they didn't tell the city, so no one knew, and it's there now.
What if the seller says, well, we bought it, it was like that when we bought it?
If it was like that already, then our records probably would have showed it already. Right? The fact that the value we would have taken that purchase value 2 years ago. Let's say 2 owners ago, they added the bedroom.
Right.
And the current owner bought the house, and we would have seen that, right? We would be able to look back and say, hey, this addition looks pretty old. So owner bought it 2 years ago. So it was probably there, it was probably included in that value when they bought it. So we picked up the assessed value. So the assessment change was already picked up when they bought that.
Okay, so if the property is actually smaller than what is reflected on the county records, will you give them money back?
It depends, right? It depends on how we base. Yeah, it depends on how we base the assessed value. If we realize the assessment, and how long ago it was, right?
How long ago? Okay.
Because there's a statute of limitation. The law allows the assessor to change it up to 4 years. right?
Okay.
And then the homeowner has the duty to inform the assessor, because we have 500,000 homes in Alameda County. I cannot go to every single one of them, right?
Yeah.
So it is the homeowner's duty to let us know. If they don't tell us within those 4 years, sorry, you had 4 years to tell us, you didn't do it, there's nothing more I can do. The law doesn't allow me to change it.
And then one last general question is that, do churches, and this is just me, do churches get charge property tax?
It depends.
It depends.
Some do, some don't.
Oh,
Right.
how do we do that so we don't get taxed
So,
for the church building?
remember when I said there's a form for everything?
Yeah.
There's a form. It's called it's called the exemption form. There are 3 different exemption forms for churches that they can use depending on what they're using the space for, right?
Okay.
Some churches don't own the property, right?
Okay.
Someone else, and they lease it.
Okay.
So if that's the case, there is what is called a church exemption form, right?
Okay.
And in order to qualify for that church exemption under that, they have to use the space only for church purposes only.
Okay.
So if they rent it out for parties or they do something else with the space, they wouldn't be able to get the exemption.
Okay.
There's another exemption called the religious exemption. That's primarily for churches that use it for schools, right?
Okay.
Again, they have to use it for only those purposes. And then there's a third exemption called the welfare exemption. And that's much harder, but they can do more with the space. But in the welfare exemption, they have to own it. The church itself has to own the property.
Okay.
And they can only use it for church-related purposes or social welfare purposes under the welfare exemption. If they use it for anything else, they would lose their exempt purposes. And
So
they would pay property taxes.
they're only exempted a portion of it, but not entire.
It depends.
Oh.
Depends
Okay.
on what they're using those portions for.
Okay.
Right? So we have churches where they use part of it as a event space and they rent it out. That they will have to pay property taxes on that portion.
Okay.
We have churches where they don't own the property, and they don't want to show their finances. Churches don't have to pay income taxes, but they have to pay property taxes unless they qualify. And part of the qualification process requires that the church show their finances.
Okay.
And some churches don't want to do that. So they have to pay property taxes in that situation. Some churches also own houses that they rent out. They have to pay property taxes for those, right? So that's why I always say it depends.
Right.
And if you're part of a church and you want to get more details and you're not sure, reach out to me. I'll have my exemption staff work with you, and they'll tell you if there's an exemption for that parcel or not, and they'll tell you how you can and if you qualify for anything.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Oh, there's a question here. Do they have to tear down if it's unpermitted?
That is a question for the city, right?
For the city.
Assessors don't tell you whether you can tear it down or keep it or whatever. Assessors only put a value on it.
Okay.
So even if it's really poorly built and it's really crappy, as the assessor, I'm still going to put a value on it.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
tell you to tear it down because it's crappy, but I'm going to say, well, because it's crappy, it's worth less. So we're still going to value it.
All right, all right. Okay, if there's any more questions, and if there's not, we're going to end at this. Thank you very much once again for being a guest today, and thank you. So informative, right, guys? Until our next prop, well, I hope we could invite you again.
Happy to talk to you whenever you guys want.
Okay, thank you, and have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Cielo.